Magic in world building. World building 101. This is a topic that I talk about off and on. A lot of people talk about it. I've been watching some video responses on a channel and in the brigade. This discussion's popped up a few times, and I've had this talk with a few friends over the years who were creating their own game world for whatever game system they were trying to. They were interested at the time. When we're building our worlds, how big, how elaborate, how detailed, how much information, what do you put? Okay, one element of most hack and slash fantasy game systems is magic. You can also get certain levels of that in Cyberpunk or the equivalent stuff today. I mean, obviously Shadowrun has magic in it. Argument can be made that's what the Force is for Star Wars. Star Wars has its version of magic. So, the base question is always how much and how little magic is your world going to have. Now, if you're playing from a pre-made game system that's usually set up for you, but not always. Typically, I'm going to fall back on Dungeons & Dragons because it is the largest gorilla in the room, and it has the most extensive rules and variants of rules. We're into our 5th edition, and if you go by the earlier stuff and some of the sidebars, you're talking 7 or 8 different set of rule books, of sets of serious divisional sets of books, all interlinked and built upon each other, I grant you, but each with a different take. There is, while D&D is dominated by magic, there is no actual rule anywhere in any of the books that I have encountered that says that the world absolutely must have this amount, this specific amount of magic available. So, you see the differences. Now, if you've ever played MERP, and most of you probably haven't, but you've heard of it, the Middle-earth role-playing game, I've just done an extensive set of reviews on all the books on that particular stuff, some better than others, I grant you. MERP uses magic sparingly. Magic items are probably more prevalent than actual magic itself. The fact that if you have a character who's a magic user, outright magic user, sorcerer, what have you, they're a rare bird. If you go by the stories, by the books, and by the novels, by Tolkien's concept, magic is a subtle and powerful thing. The wise who have magic do not use it lightly, and they don't wave it around as parlor tricks. Even Gandalf would prefer to actually use fireworks to create fireworks for entertainment, as opposed to, he magically enhanced fireworks, but he didn't actually use magic outright to create illusions of fireworks. So, anytime Gandalf used his magic, he understood that he was basically firing off a flare. It's like in the Force. If you're a powerful enough Force user and there's dark side users nearby, every time you use it, you're firing off a flash or a flare saying, "Here I am, come see me." So Gandalf knew to use his stuff sparingly. Otherwise, Sauron and Saruman could track him, knew what he was doing, or get a good idea of what he was doing. And so you have to take that into account. Now, in traditional D&D, we don't worry about such things, although there's spells that allow you to track people if you really go to that level of stuff. So if the bad guys can use lies, I've used that as a GM against players numerous times, and they got cheesed. They got mad. How do they always know where we are? Well, because there's all kinds of spells here. Let them find out. If you're not taking preparations to protect yourselves from those things, that's on you. Books tell you all about it. Work on it. The level of magic. I've created game systems, let me rephrase it, I've created game worlds where magic is prevalent as the technology. That being it's quite common to walk into any merchant's or any home of significant value and find magical gems lighting the rooms as opposed to having flickering lamps of blubber oil or smoky torches, and finding every other mundane thing has got some kind of magic enhancement to it. And then I've created worlds where the magic was extremely sparse. It's the magic items were few and far in between. I'm more likely to find magic from somebody casting it than because that's a flashbang. They're going to fire it off and it's gone, it's used. Whereas opposed to an item that's going to go on and on and on, we'll make them rare. And I've had to learn the economies of magic. And a lot of times we don't care. We don't really care about that sort of stuff. We want to have fun and we're entertaining our people. Well, you know what? I know a lot of people that if you go and they come to the table expecting to get loaded up with magical stuff, and if they don't, they get upset about it. They get cheesed. They feel like they're being cheated somehow. And then there's other times where he becomes entirely too abundant. When you sit there and they cry about, well, I don't have enough gold, I don't have enough gemstones. And they walk into a town, they're carrying thousands of gold and thousands and tens of thousands of gold worth of gemstones into a town that's burdened the economy at best with 500 gold pieces in a given year. These people literally could buy the kingdom several times over. And whether they acknowledge it or not, it messes with the economy. So what's a few silver pieces or copper pieces? It got to the point, and it gets to the point where you don't even utilize those things because who bothers? Only the most anally retentive keep track of that kind of level of detail. I've got that kind of money. What's Trump change to me? So I bought the deal. You paid the vendor. Who cares if you deducted the 15 silver or not? Because it's not going to make a dent in what you got. On the other hand, if you play with the economy in mind, first off, they're going to inflate everything because they want money and you got it. Second, the economy can only handle so much. So I come in with a +1 silver dagger of slaying that's worth 40,000 gold pieces or 15,000 gold pieces, and the community's great, gross national product is 500. There ain't anybody in town that can buy that damn thing, even if you cut it at 10%. Nobody's going to come up with 1,500 gold pieces. Maybe one rich old geezer on the other side of town if you convince him to buy it. But that might be a significant portion of his treasury too. And what point is him buying that dagger if it just for show? I mean, I'm just saying, you might have to go to some pretty big cities, and even they have limits. And that's something we don't take into account. It's the side of the coin is how much magic is too much. I've had this discussion. I've brought this thing up. I sat there and watched a buddy of mine repeatedly when he GM look at the mechanics of treasure in the back of the Dungeon Master's Guide, and literally take it literally. And he's rolling, and I'm looking, and I says, "There's 200. You got 202 rings of protection, 202 +1 rings of protection, amongst numerous other things. 50 +2 swords." And I'm thinking, in what world do you have 50 +2 swords just laying around? We just walked into and wiped out a small dragon's horde, or dragon, and now we're at his horde, and now there's 50 +2 swords. Along with, 300 +1 swords, and a couple +5. You see the pyramid of crazy here? There's no way. There's no way. And I tried explaining to the Buzzface, as I used to call him, with Kenny, that it says, if you roll it up, it says, okay, there's 60,000 gold pieces worth of value here, and a handful of items, not hundreds of items. And if you look at the value, the base value of a single +1 ring, you're only going to have a few trinkets of this nature floating in that treasure trove. And most of that treasure trove is going to be coppers and silvers in reality. You might have 50,000 copper sitting there. Who the hell's going to load? Who's going to shovel the pennies into a wheelbarrow and lug it off? That's the stuff that gets left behind because you can't convert it. And then the PCs get frustrated. Well, we only got a couple hundred gold pieces out of this entire thing. Well, you could have called the 50,000 copper pieces out and found the exchange rate. But you know what? How many communities would you have had to gone to change it if you really are being reality? So, do we have such abundance that it's absurd? Now, I make the argument that the player characters are a cut above the rest. They're the heroes in the story. So, having them have more than a handful of magic items isn't unreasonable because they're collecting them, they're acquiring them. They're either getting them from the dead bad guys they're wiping out, or they're getting them from treasure troves, or they're being given to them as reward for whatever they're doing. So they're able to accumulate stuff. Now, this is their future retirement fund too, if you want to make it that look at it. The fact that the average Joe Q public does not run around with a +1 sword and a +1 rings of protection is because there are just not that many out there. Your players just happen to luck into the best ones. And and then they get a next one, they take the old one and they sell it off. They find a buyer for it, usually, right? So, do you make the layer or do you make it smart? It's a hard call, and sometimes you just have to do it through experience. You have to play with what's okay, and if you don't care about that sort of thing, then it's a moot question. But at someday, if you don't play, you'll look at someday, you'll sit back and you go, Jesus, how is it I have a group of level 5 characters running around with the ability to handle a challenge rating 3 times their size? And that's because they're carrying the equivalent of magical machine guns and hand grenades and rocket launchers. They've got the firepower that they've got 3 times the firepower that they should have. They're that much, they can put out far more damage and before the other guy can get it on them. So maybe it's too much. On the other side, maybe it's not enough. It's a matter of taste and flavor, I guess. And still, it's something to take consideration when you're world building. How much is too much? And if you have such a plethora, such a wide variety of magic, then it should be less awe-inspiring. Oh, really? That's a +2 sword? This is a +3 sword? Come on. I'm just saying, you have one without the other, you're going to find it a little bit less. And then you have to take that into account as well. So if I'm going to have my players running around with plus weapon, everybody's got plus weapons and plus armor, then my principal bad guys need to have the same thing. At least the equivalent or maybe slightly less than what the player characters have, so that we're not over-dominating them, but they should still have them, because otherwise it's redundant. And I understand in later game systems, as 5.0 from D&D is shied away from the physical items and enhanced abilities and feats and things like this. So now the people become the magic item. They're the powerhouse. They don't need this other stuff. This other stuff just magnifies that original stuff. I have mixed opinions on that. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It's not really for me to say, because I'm not going to run a 5.0. I'm not ever likely to own the 5.0 unless it shows up on the game shelf at a discount price and I don't have any more 3.5 stuff to buy. Then maybe I might get it. Maybe not. I don't know. How much material do you need? I might have the core book so I can utilize it and adapt my old stuff to the modern stuff. But it's when I was playing the 4.0, I would never go out and buy it. There's some good books in there for use for source material. I'm not saying there aren't some stuff, treasure books and them things like that. Monster manuals, pretty much the same as the old ones, so there's no point in buying them, other than the fact that they've changed the stats. The core books, I just no. I'd like some of the feat systems in there, but there's certain things in there I don't like. A lot of things I don't like. One of the things is the lack of creative control over world building. That's just my take on it. Maybe they made books that I didn't see. I only had access to about a dozen of them, so and there's always more. And then there's the next ones, and then the next one. So they're already working on 6.0. Even if they haven't put it to paper, they are plotting it out now. So what's 6.0 going to be? How many changes are going to be? How different is it going to be? Can it be different? Are they going to retro back to the older stuff and rehash that? Could be. Don't know. We'll have to see. Too much magic, not enough magic. How do you make that balance? Sometimes it's just trial and error. Trial and error. I always wondered, if you look at, it wasn't until 3.5 came along. 2.0 has some touched on this about creating magic items and creating your own spells as a wizard. But 3.5 went extensive on it. There's extensive information on how there's steps and procedures of doing this. And a big part of it is burning up huge amounts of experience points, which I kind of have. I know why. That's their version of a check and balance to prevent a world where you get 202 magical rings sitting in a treasure trove, because there's just so freaking many of them. It's because these guys are cropping these things out like candy. So if we make them so they got to spend 5,000 experience points per item per level or something, then they're not going to produce very many of them, are they? And they're going to be very judicial in handing them out. They're going to sell them for a high rate of money, or they're using them for themselves until you whack them and take it from them. So if you take away that experience points and just make it gold value and material value, it's still expensive. But now we've got this potential for the the magical factory, so to speak. So somewhere, someplace, some Hogwarts Academy somewhere, hundreds of novice magic users are crafting magical plus one items as, you know, uh, classroom homework, and then those items are being distributed across the world to support the college or whatever, the university. I'm just saying, how else would you get so many of them? It's like bags of holding. Everybody gets a bag of holding. They're so common. From the way most gaming systems go, everybody ends up with a bag of holding of some kind. When in reality, there might be one. Should be one in the whole group, and everybody has to share. But that's not fun. That's not part of keeping score. So you have to make that choice. Is it too much, too little? There you go. Otherwise, I'm going to keep rambling on for 20 minutes.